Welcome to Google Developer Group's Dallas. It's August 2021. Yes, we're in 2021. We're in August of 2021. Time is flying by. Here are some of your organizers from GG Dallas. My name is Luke, and Stacy's on the call tonight. If you ever have any questions, reach out to any of us. You can reach us through the Meetup page or on the Slack channel. Tonight's Zoom is being provided by Bottle Rocket Studios. It says we're hiring. We say we because I happen to work at Bottle Rocket. And so if you have any questions about what it's like working at Bottle Rocket, I can help answer those. These are some of the positions we are hiring for. These are some of the technology positions. We need lots of people. We also have Flutter devs that's not listed here. So if you're interested in doing Flutter full-time, give us a look. We've got a website, ggdallas.com. Just renewed for 2 more years. So we will have that. We're also on a couple of social networks. And now it's time for our feature presentation. Jennifer McGee has been a lead Android developer at Bottle Rocket for 3 years now, and has been active in the Android world for over 10. She's worked on apps for clients such as Outback Steakhouse, Hallmark, Oprah, HGTV, and several others. Fun fact, Jennifer McGee is the, I guess, founding mother of GDG Dallas in many senses. I don't know. I basically got it all started up again, and it has been going pretty much continuously since she restarted the Dallas Android Developer Group, which later became GDG Dallas, the event you are here tonight. So a big hand to your friend and mine, Jennifer McGee.
Well, thank you very much, Luke. Welcome to my little quick overview. I'm calling it What's New in Android UX, although it's kind of what came out in Android 12 or in GoogleIO that you might care about if you're an Android experience architect or if you are an Android designer. So it's kind of like a whirlwind tour of, I watched almost all, probably not as many as Stacy, but almost all the videos from GoogleIO, and was like, if I was a designer or a strategist, what would I care about? And I kind of collated, your high points so that you guys don't have to watch all the videos in order to get that. Because I know you designers and strategists, if they're, or maybe just you have to give these to your designers and strategists, you want them to have an overview. I know that they are dealing with multiple platforms and they want to know what's going on, but they don't necessarily want to watch everything. So this is kind of the high points of what's new in Android UX. And from a developer, I will not be able to answer all the developer questions on this because it's kind of like drinking from a water hose, but you could feel free to ask me some developer questions and I may or may not know the answers. So let's kick off. We're going to start. I found a very lovely, I think this is like a 30-second video from Chet Haas where he's like, hey, what's new in Android 12? And I think it hits a lot of the things that UIs and strategists that are important to you guys. Now, I'd say number 1 and number 3 are very important. Number 2, not so much to you guys. But since it's 30 seconds, and he says it's 3 things, but it's really like he sandwiched like a million things in there and called it 3. So let's go ahead and watch that real quick.
Here are the top 3 things in Android 12 from GoogleIO, just for developers. I've only got 90 seconds to cover material that's explained in several 15-minute videos, so buckle up. First, Android 12 has the biggest change in overall UI since the Lollipop release several years ago. From default launch animations to dynamic color theming to notification improvements to revamped widgets to video transcoding to graphical effects like stretch on overscroll and blur. There's plenty of stuff here for users to enjoy and for developers to dig into. Next, let's talk about performance. We've done a lot of work under the covers improving things like lock contention, binder calls, and database queries, which all had huge impact across the entire system. We've also improved app startup by optimizing how we load APKs, and we've introduced a new library called Jetpack Macro Benchmark to help you test and fix performance issues in your application. Finally, we've continued to improve user privacy. For example, users can limit their location precision to approximate only. Also, we fixed a long-standing issue by allowing device scanning and pairing to use a new Bluetooth permission instead of requiring the location permission. Also, check out the privacy dashboard, the camera and mic indicators and toggles, and app hibernation. That's all I have time for now, but there are a ton of other things you'll want to know about, so be sure to check out the video playlist link below to get the full scoop on Android 12 and GoogleIO.
So as you can see, he lied. There were definitely not 3 things there, but it is a pretty good lightning overview. So I'm now going to go a little bit more into detail on some of those things, especially things that I think might apply to user experience. The first one is we kind of covered this built-in splash screen. We have been doing kind of rolling our own splash screens for a long time. It creates some, it gives you a lot of flexibility, but it also created this nasty little piece of jank sometimes where you have kind of like this white screen before your splash screen. It wasn't very pretty. We basically, now Android is finally saying, hey, yeah, the splash screen, it's a thing. We're going to help you out with it a bit. And by default, all apps will now have this ability. They're giving you a lot of things you can customize about the splash screen. You can have can have an icon. The icon can have the background. The icon can have animation. I believe it can kind of move around. You can have a branding image. The background can have effects. So there's a lot more things about splash screen. Now, if you were previously kind of rolling your own splash screen, you can turn this off, but you might want to consider converting. But if it's a new app and you don't have a splash screen yet, they kind of have made it much easier for you. This is kind of what it looks like. So you can kind of see this splash screen come in. You can see the animation. You can see some around the corners. It's playing slowly, so it's not giving you the full effect, unfortunately. That is really unfortunate. But yes, as you can see, if it weren't being so slow, you could see the different splash screen kind of animating as it is. If you want to watch that video in more detail and better, there will be, when I give out the slides, which I'm also planning to distribute at the end, especially for those of you who want to give these slides to your user experience people or your designers, then you will also have the reference to be able to watch the video in detail. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about, okay, so we talked about splash screens. Probably the biggest thing that we're hearing from our compatriots, or the biggest kind of splash talk, which is funny because we just talked about splash screens, is this Material U and this dynamic color palettes. So kind of the idea is, for a long time, Android has treated all users as kind of the same. There's just this one size fits all idea. Now they're allowing you to have kind of this customized set of colors that it pulls from your home screen, from whatever your home screen image is. You can now have this customized set of colors that they will build for you. And those colors will be used in not only, as you can see down in the bottom, you can see them being used. Kind of there's that, if the idea would be is that pink bubbly looking thing. I'm not a designer, so you're gonna have to deal with my developer descriptions of design things. Sorry, it's a pink bubbly looking thing to me. If you get this pink bubbly looking thing, then these might be how those colors would translate in some of the built-in apps. So for instance, in the calculator, this is how it might look, or in messaging, this is how it might look in Android 12. But the really nice thing is it's not only for Google's apps. So as you're writing your own apps, you can also tie into and use this color palette, which will be much more rich and full than previously with the colors. We used to have like a primary color and an accent color, and now we've got this whole palette. And the idea is they've made this palette in a way that if you choose your colors appropriately from the palette, no matter what the colors are that it pulls from your image, your palette will be accessible and it will be, work fairly well for you. So, and you can see over on the left kind of an example of like here, if your image with these mountains, might be some colors that would pull, and this is the different kind of palette choices you would get. And I think it's 256 colors. I think is that that's the number. It might be off slightly, but there are quite a few colors. So does anybody have any questions about Material U? And specifically dynamic color palettes. Notifications are changing a lot. Well, not really a lot, but they are protecting you from yourself. So previously, we were saying that you could customize all parts of your notification, and people were using that to kind of make their own notifications and give them more flexibility. but also kind of they were overwriting all the different parts of the notification. And Google has changed the look and feel of the notifications about 20 million times. Maybe, I don't know, Stacy, 20 million? Is that too many? Just about every release.
Yeah, there's some new feature or some new capability, or they require that like notifications now tie into media session in order to do something else, but it's not really clear. It's you know, keeps you on your toes. You want that user engagement, you better be engaged.
Yep. So in order to make things a little less where developers and designers shoot themselves in the foot by making their own notification and then customizing everything, and then it doesn't tie in with whatever version of Android that the user is actually using, so it doesn't look right or doesn't look pretty. They've said, nope, no more customizing everything. Now you get to customize this section. And I mean, I think it'll help people out in the long run, but it is kind of a limitation. So that is a thing that they are changing. Any questions about notification customization? Widgets. Oh, they are so pushing widgets. And that's pretty cool. Sort of. We'll talk about that in a second. Widgets used to be, they're making it a lot easier to do things with widgets. They're making them easier to find. They're making it so that widgets, like the preview for widgets actually looks like what the widget is going to look like. Whoa, amazing. They are also adding a lot of new capabilities that widgets just didn't have before. They weren't really very well supported in a lot of ways. They're adding the ability to round corners, and how they're going to tie into the dynamic color palette that we just talked about. They're adding checkbox switches and radio buttons to widgets, which we didn't have before, which seems kind of crazy that we didn't have that before. But yeah, widgets can be extended with your voice, and they can tie into the Google Assistant and Auto. So that's nice. All these things are really nice about widgets. But they gave us some statistics. They said, and I'm sorry, this blew up poorly, but they said, hey guys, widgets are really important. At least 84% of users have one widget, and 63% of users have multiple widgets. And I was like, that's kind of damning with praise, isn't it? I mean, seriously, 84. So how many apps do you have on your phone? I know I have hundreds of apps, and 84% of users have at least one widget. So the chances that your app is actually like going to be that widget seems kind of low, especially if only 63% have more than one. Now, I would say as a strategist or a user experience person, I'm not saying don't use widgets. I'm not saying that if you have a strong use case for a widget that it doesn't make sense. I'm just saying I would make sure it's a very strong use case, and I wouldn't blow your budget. Even though they are pushing widgets and they have given us a lot more features and a lot more functionality with widgets, 84% have one widget, one. So that's a thing. Stretch on overscroll. This is, oh, sorry, I didn't pause. Any questions about widgets? No.
You were saying that the custom colors from that material, those are supposed to be pulled in for your widgets, or like that's the idea is that you can theme your widget to fit in more.
And it really makes a lot of sense, because thinking about it, those custom colors are coming from that home screen, your widgets, you know, you want it all to feel tied together. So yeah, it would make sense to pull them in for your widget. And they are giving us that capability.
I probably should have asked this earlier. So are you supposed to use those same colors inside your app? Like, are they recommending that you pull them into the app as well? Or is it more of just on that widget?
They are recommending you pull them into your app. Now, as a designer, that's kind of scary. I can understand that being kind of scary, because designers are all about their colors, right? And this is like, hey, well, you don't really get to say what the colors are, but they have it said, hey, these colors will be semi-decent and accessible if you use them correctly. So but yes, they are suggesting you use those custom color palettes in your application to make the application feel personalized and personalized for that user, not just, well, that's how whatever your app is looks.
So I had a little question about the palette, because I haven't really messed with it that much. Are these just basically major extensions to the palette API, and then they just use the palette API like and gave it like a custom set? So instead of it giving you all the contrasting colors and things like that, it just gives you the like a custom set with saturation levels?
I am not 100% sure, Stacy. That is more in depth than I know about the custom palette, but I think so. Like that would be my guess, but I can't.
It looked like it was. That's why I was like kind of like going, "Huh, they found a good use for that. Yay!"
Relaunch that feature we had as a new feature. It's like, didn't you have this before? Like, yeah, no, new feature. Like, it was like 3 versions ago, but okay.
They did tie it in with a bunch of other stuff. Like it's used places.
Yeah, now they're actually using it, I guess, is the thing. They didn't even use it before.
Okay, so that's that. Let's talk about a little bit of stretch over scroll, as Stacy talked about at the beginning of our talk. But if you are not familiar with your stretch over scroll, and I wanted to show you kind of what it has looked like and what it's going to. So in your current Android experience, it's kind of this glow effect, and it looks like this. So you see, you're moving around, and you've got your glow going on. So that's kind of before Android 12. All right, let's stop that. So now let's go ahead and see the stretch. So as you can see, it's doing the stretch thing. Like it looks a lot more bouncy. It will be, you can use, it's kind of automatically enabled in a lot of places. Recycler view, list view, scroll view, nested scroll view, like lots of places. It will pretty much be on for free, but there are some things that you might want to think about. You can now do this thing called a catch, where you kind of user catches the bounce, and then you could react to that. So that's something you might want to consider if you're going to deal with it. It is not just vertical, it is also horizontal. They control the vertical, they control the horizontal. It can stretch all the ways. So let's go ahead, and I have an example of what it would look like in the horizontal and vertical. So this is kind of what Google has given us as an example of that stretch, or horizontal over scroll running. So we've got our normal moving around, we've got our, vertical stretch, but you can kind of also just see how it works. When things start to get, see, that's kind of crazy. That is kind of ridiculously big, right? So yes, your stretch. It can work. It can be pretty dramatic. All right, so that's stretch. Okay, permission changes. If you're a strategist, these are some of the biggest things you need to think about. They're not the most exciting, but you really do need to think about them, especially for your app. So we're going to touch on them briefly. One of the big ones is location. They are now giving you the user the ability to switch back and forth kind of at will with whether or not they are doing coarse versus fine location. So that's just something you have to keep in mind. You can't necessarily assume that you're going to have fine location. You need to make sure you can handle both. Also, if you haven't been, this is not new to Android 12, but if you haven't been keeping up, they also have this time only, which just came out, and I think, I'm not sure if it was 10 or 11, but recently, but not that recently. So if you were doing anything that was against the best practices for how you deal with location permissions, shame on you, and you need to deal with it now, because you must check location permissions right before you use them, because they can turn off on any time. And now they can also go from precise to approximate. And they can also say, have said only this time. So don't be storing any of those location permissions in any kind of local storage. And assuming they're going to stay the same, that will get you so burned so fast. Oh, that's just what they look like. They're kind of pretty. I mean, for location permissions. Bluetooth. Finally, Bluetooth has its own permission. Yes. No longer will your users be trying to connect your users to, like, I don't know, some sort of a Bluetooth low energy device or some sort of headphones or something. And now they're like, why do you need my location? And now your users are creeped out, and they don't understand what's going on. So now you can actually say, no, really, I just want Bluetooth. And they can be like, okay, that makes sense. So this has been something that's been tied together forever, for basically, as far as I can tell, just because it's how it was set up in the first place, not really for a good reason. So they finally separated these out, which is nice. Also, they are making it much, much, much easier for your users to determine whether or not, basically, if you're being a good citizen with regards to their locations. They're adding this location dashboard, and your users can see when your app is using what location. So play nice, be responsible, use the correct location, because otherwise your users are going to see it and they're going to get creeped out. One special thing that you really want to be watching out for is know what your libraries are doing. So if you are using, especially some of those location tracking kind of libraries, anything your library is doing is attributed to your app. So you will get slapped for whatever they're doing. So you might want to go in and check that, figure out all the location permissions you have, check when they're used, look at it. You just don't want to creep out your users. And now there will be much easier for them to tell if you're being naughty. So don't be naughty. The camera and mic indicator. There's not too much to say about this one other than they wanted to make it a lot more obvious when the camera or mic is being used on your app. It shouldn't affect you unless you're using the camera and mic, and mostly it's just an indicator showing. There are a couple more little pieces. Now it's part of, you can pull it down to turn them off and on really easily. So the camera and mic, it's a thing, it goes away just like all permissions. It can go away at any time. It's sensitive, and now your user will see it. Yeah, so that you just have to know that. And if you're designing something with the camera or mic, make sure that there's a good reason for it and that you know that your user will know that it's happening. All right, any questions about, well, I guess I'll do app hibernation was the next part, and then I'll kind of open it up to permissions discussions. No, not other stuff, app hibernation. So in Android 11, if your app had a location permission, and that location permission, and you didn't use the app for a while, the location permission could possibly, or it was in the background, the location permission could go away. They're kind of extending that concept to the concept of app hibernation. So if you have an app on your device and you haven't used it in a few months, I think a few months is about right. They haven't given us a hard deadline, but in a while, kind of a while, then your app will start losing permissions and other things. So your runtime permissions will go away. They will no longer be, you won't be, as in if you haven't selected it, but you won't have that permission. So you will have to check for those permissions before you use them. You will have to, kind of do your due diligence about, hey, do I have that permission before you use it? Just like you always have to do with your permissions. One of the biggest impacts is notifications. So if you have an app that's sitting in the background and it hasn't been opened in a long time, notifications will no longer be a thing you can do. That is a big, hopefully you're not spamming your users with notifications when they haven't used your app in a long time, but if you were counting on that to work, it's not going to work. As a app user, I am thrilled. As a developer, it's now something you have to keep in mind. Also, the caches are going to be cleared. That shouldn't be too big of a problem, I would think, for most developers, most strategists. If they haven't used your app in several months, you shouldn't really be using stuff from the cache anyway. But those are things that will go away if your app hasn't been opened by the user. All right, so I'll open up to questions about permissions. Any questions about permissions?
I think the main thing is to note that the remove permissions if app isn't used is like the default setting.
Yes.
And everybody, a lot of Android devices have actually had this since 11. If you're in the Samsung Google or Pixel ecosystem, they've had it. So
yeah. Also, as you referenced, Stacy, they can, if you can convince your user that it's a really, really, really good reason that they shouldn't lose their permission if they haven't used the app in a while, maybe, but yeah, good luck with that.
Sorry, so if you have an app that reminds you of something every day, let's say, and the user hasn't opened your app in, a week, would that be affected?
I wouldn't think so. I think a week would be too short.
But, so it's like a forgotten app, basically, then, yeah,
Yes.
they would shut down those, okay. Cool.
And it can be that it literally hasn't used that permission in a very long time. So even if they've used the app consistently, but they haven't used that permission of the app, the permission itself can be removed because the accessor has never or hasn't been used in a long time.
For notifications, you don't really have to approve that. Isn't it automatic, more or less, for notifications? It's not like a location or a Wi-Fi or like a. Is it? I could be wrong.
Well, remember, there's the permissions that you have to put in your app, and then there's the permissions that actually, like, that are not implied ones, and so they have the runtime thing that pops up.
Right.
So it's like internet. Internet is implied. You don't have to do a pop-up for internet, right?
Right.
But you still have to add it to your manifest. So there's different ones. It depends on their safety level.
Okay.
Okay. Any other permissions questions? Okay. So that's kind of, we have finally finished our more in-depth discussion of Chet Haas's 90 seconds. So his 3 things we have now covered in a little bit more detail. So that's a thing. But there are some things he didn't mention that I actually think are kind of really useful for strategists and designers to, and user experience people to know. And so I wanted to cover some other things. The first one is rich content insertion. I just think this is a really neat capability. They're making it a lot easier to work with rich content, a lot easier to pull it from the keyboard and the clipboard and drag and drop it. I have a little video of us doing that. Also, if you look here, they're kind of pushing using multiple apps at the same time. So especially with using multiple apps at the same time, this rich content is just they're making it easier to deal with, and they're kind of pushing it. And I think it would be great. Like, the possibilities for your app are nice. So they're making rich content insertion easier. New file formats. This is really nice, although it is only in Android 12 right now. And it's not going to have a lot of effect on you, other than the fact that whatever your resources are, as Android 12 kind of moves down the stack, more people have it, it might make more sense to kind of use this ABIF format. I've got some really good resources there. If you go and follow that link about ABIF, you can see all the different things about it. Mostly what you care about is it's going to be similar quality images for much smaller. So that's a nice thing. Keep your users' data, save your users' data, basically. But I don't think it's quite ready for prime time for everybody because it's only Android 12. Voice integration and shortcuts. This is the part I am most excited about personally, because I love voice integration, because I do a lot of stuff in my car, and it's kind of not safe to do things without your voice, right? So they are really, really making voice integration and shortcuts easier to work with in apps. The basic idea here is that you can easily use this thing called a capability, and you can connect it to, like, without writing a whole full assistant app, you can connect to functionality in your app via deep link using this thing called a capability, and easily use voice in your app. Now, we're going to get to that in a little bit more detail. There's a really nice little video giving a basic overview.
Launch and complete tasks with your app faster. App Action is how developers can integrate Google Assistant into your Android app, and is how end users can launch and control Android apps with their voice. Let's see the user journey of ordering a pizza. It can be quite a process if your app isn't voice enabled. First, your user will have to find the app icon in the sea of icons. Then find in the app where they can start an order. Then select that they want to order a pizza. And finally, customize their pizza to include the sauces, cheeses, and toppings they want. Not too bad, but imagine a user being able to say, "Hey Google, order a pizza from example app." And the app is automatically open and an order started. Now all they need to do is customize the pizza. So much easier. App Actions allows Android developers to add voice commands to their apps to accelerate tasks like these for your users.
Okay, so that's the basics of app actions, but there are some things you really need to know if you're thinking about kind of using these these 2 ways to trigger app actions. First is there are 2 ways to trigger app actions. One of these is these built-in intents. There are a list of them. I'll talk about them more in a second, and they are provided by Google, and that gives you all sorts of nice things like lots of languages and different ways to say things. And did they put a or an in there? I don't have to care about that. Those are your easy peasy kind of free money kind of things. But while there are a lot of them, there are not a lot of them. There are just some. So if you need to go ahead and do something that's not one of those things, then you can do a custom intent. So we'll talk a little bit more about this in detail. So built-in app actions, I'm giving you a link to all the different kinds of built-in app actions there are that are available right now from Google. There are a few different areas, but I mean, we're talking hundreds, but we're only talking hundreds. Some of the ones I thought were most interesting were like scan a barcode or order a menu item or get an order or open an app feature. But if you wanted to create your own, these are some of the things you have to worry about. Okay, I'll give you just a little summary and you'll have the reference down at the bottom. So if you were trying to deal with custom app actions, some of the things you have to worry about are you can create kind of these patterns for different kinds of strings for integrating with your app, but you have to worry about things like a or an, and you have to write, what you should do is you should go ahead and talk to a bunch of different people and figure out, hey, kind of watch them, be like, hey, you want to do X, talk to your phone and tell it how to do it. And kind of watch what they do and write down what they do and figure out this set of strings that your users are going to use to interact with your app. So it's kind of a standard, usability kind of study kind of thing, but it is something that you have to worry about if you're doing these custom app actions. Let's see if we'll give it one. Nope, it's not going to play for us. Well, that is frustrating, but you guys do have the reference. Okay, shortcuts. Shortcuts they're kind of pushing shortcuts. Shortcuts are cool and all that. They can shortcuts to do more things. You used to be able to only have 10 shortcuts. Now you can have more. These changes are backward compatible and they tie in with app actions, which is nice.
You can implement in-app shortcut suggestions.
My internet is just not feeling
You can
it.
implement in-app shortcut suggestions. These are personalized shortcut suggestions highlighted within your app for the most common user journeys. As an app developer, you will control what user journeys to prioritize, how frequently to show the shortcut suggestions, and options to customize how these suggestions appear in your app. Users can click the Setup button to easily create a shortcut for what they recently completed in your app so they can re-engage faster next time. As an example, if a user opens the eBay app and manually navigates to check the status of their bids, they might see an in-app suggestion to create a shortcut in the system. With one tap, the user can create the shortcut to simply ask Assistant to show my bids next time they want to check the status of their bids in the eBay app. We are even working on bringing shortcuts to search surfaces.
Okay, so they're also bringing them to search surfaces, which is nice. So shortcuts and, shortcuts, easier ways to tie in with voice, and they're going to be more full featured. And app actions easily can, use voice in your app. So those are actually some of the things I'm most excited about. But we'll see if the strategist that, your strategist or your UX or your designer, probably not your designer, are excited about them. Motion layout. So as you know, in Android 12 and with, it's all about motion, things being fluid and changing and, growing and shrinking. And those are beautiful and they're lovely and they're wonderful. And if you have developers, you also know that they're expensive and they take time and they're the first thing to be cut often, which is sad. So Google is giving us a few more tools with motion layout to help with it. Motion layout also in general is a tool that your developers can use, and it does make things easier, but not perfect. But they are also giving us a few tools to do some things that they're like, oh, people might want to do this. Here's some things that should be easy to do. So I'll go ahead. Okay, we will not show the video of the motion layout helpers. There is a video of the motion layout helpers. There are some really nice ones. Specifically, there is the ability to have screens go like a pack of cards, and they fan out really nicely, and you can kind of move through them in a nice way. There's the ability to make it really easy, like they show a nice little graphic where you have like the different little icons, and they're moving and they're sliding past each other. It looks really nasty. And then you can add animations where they display and hide in really beautiful ways. And you guys can't see them, which is frustrating. But if you want to see them, they will be in the link. So let's talk a little bit more about some other things that Google is pushing. Foldables and large screens. They really want you to do foldables and large screens. And there are kind of some things they want you to consider about foldables and large screens. The first one is they want you to use this column layout, which basically just, you lay out your content kind of on this column design pattern, and it makes it change to the different screens more nicely. They want you to consider multitasking, so having multiple copies of even your own app open at the same time. This kind of ties into what I mentioned about how we're going to work with media rich content moving and stuff like that. So they're really wanting you to think about that. And they want you to, they're really pushing having different input modes for your apps. So they want you to think about whether or not your user could be using a keyboard, whether or not your user could be using a mouse. In addition, they're giving us some more tools with Jetpack to make, with the window manager Jetpack library, and they're making it a lot easier to have a foldable phone not look dumb. Like to say, hey, here's the fold, and this is how I want to change how my app looks. And that's really nice because the one on the left does not look nearly as good. But how much do we care? They're really pushing this. It's really a thing. But how much do we care? And the answer is, they've got these statistics that they're giving, and they're like, hey, it's a 16% growth in tablets. Tablets have grown 16%, and that's true. And there are 400 million tablets. That's true. And there's 30 million foldables, and that's true. But the problem is that if you look at total app usage, the numbers just are not that impressive. It's a 16% growth of not much. Like 16% of a very small number is still a very small number. 400 million compared to the total number of Android apps, Android devices out there is just not that big. And foldables is still a small number. Foldables may eventually become a real thing, but, oh, no. Right. Foldables may become a real thing eventually, but like many things, if you are designing for Android, probably will become a real thing when Apple decides it's a real thing. They do exist in Android, but people are being reluctant to take them. They're being reluctant to buy them, often because they're worried about them breaking. Even though almost all users, a large number of users, said they were really interested in a foldable device, but they are not voting with their wallets. They are saying, yeah, I'd be interested in them not buying one. So while I love the idea of foldables, I personally want a foldable. I would maybe wait to go ahead and work with foldables for a little bit until maybe Apple is using foldables. And as far as when that's supposed to happen, well, people have been predicting it for a long time, but I've been talking to my Apple developer compatriots, and they were like, I was like, hey, foldables, Android, Apple's got this patent. Do you think it's going to be a thing? And they're like, well, first of all, we're not Apple, and we can't tell you the future. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. Okay, fine. But what do you think? And they're like, well, there was no talk at Dub. And even the experts are saying, hey, maybe 2023. So foldables and tablets, Google really wants you to support them. Whether you support them or not, bang for your buck. It's kind of up to you. Other than that, I have some more resources. We are kind of, if we had a bunch of time and my videos were working correctly, I would show you a really interesting little video about just differences about Material U. But it's kind of a longer video, and I don't know if you guys really want to watch all of it, but they're talking about all the different kind of things about Material U. Question, what do you guys want? Do you want me to just kind of give you an overview, or would you like to actually watch this video if it runs? So the video basically goes over a few things that we've already touched on. So it talks about the custom color palettes. It talks about the fact that we're going to be working with much bigger, more rounded, weird shapes as a designer. It talks about the fact that we are going to, a lot of the lines are thicker. It talks about the fact that motion is all over the place, and it's a really big deal. That's kind of like the high points of the video. So as a designer, if you were a designer, I would definitely watch some of these videos and just to get an overview of Material U. Material U is a big deal from a design standpoint. And then I think we're ready for opening it up to questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. While people are thinking about questions, I want everybody to open up the chat. If you can find the little chat window for Zoom, I think most people have posted something in there. So bring up that chat window, and there's something I want you to type, but I don't want you to hit enter. So I just want you to type in what is your favorite thing coming, or like the favorite area that you're excited about the change coming in Android 12. Maybe it's notifications, maybe it's widgets, maybe it's Material U. Jennifer, what are some other things from your presentation that, Google Assistant integration?
Google Assistant integration, new permissions. You might actually, be like really excited about the new privacy and the ability to tell what people are attacking your data. That could be a thing. You could really care about shortcuts. You could be like me and really, really care about voice integration. There are just lots of things to choose from.
Yeah. Just type it, don't hit enter, and we're all going to hit enter in just a second. Michael got a little ahead of us. I didn't make that as clear as I wanted. It's okay. It's okay. Michael, you can think of something else. It's okay. So everyone has their thing in. Hold on. I need to type mine. I think got one, and we'll read them off here in just a second. So everyone has theirs typed in. We're going to wait a few more seconds for everyone to get their coolest thing in Android 12 that they saw tonight. Maybe you've heard about it before, but maybe you're really excited about it. You can't wait for Android 12 because you know it's coming. You know you're excited about it, and we're all excited about it too. So when I count it down from 3, you hit enter. 3, 2, 1, hit enter. There we go. Okay, so we got Material U. We got, which I think like you wrote it out as if it's a university, but I think that I love that spelling. Google Assistant integration, voice integrations, better support for widgets. Yes, I agree, Stacy. That's awesome that we're going to have, I think, widgets that actually look like they belong on your device as opposed to some widget that just kind of always stands out because they look weird. And I know it's funny how we all like them. We like our things to look nice on our own phone. And so some ugly widget, you're like, I like what this widget does, but it looks so ugly. I don't want to use it. So if we can make it look decent, I might keep it on my phone. And I think that that's a big part of it. For me personally, I picked location permission dialog. I love that idea of really showing people like, do you just want it to have a general sense of where you are, or do you want it to know exactly where you're at? Because people might say, you know what, I'm willing to tell this app like the city I'm in because that's fine. Like you just need to find the closest restaurant for, like your brand or whatever, your closest Outback Steakhouse. The Outback Steakhouse app, also written heavily by Jennifer McGee, our speaker tonight. If you haven't used the Outback Steakhouse app, I have used it. I have gotten my loyalty points for going to Outback since launching that app, and it actually worked really well. And the waiter was not confused by it. They know about the apps. Like they know how they work. So check that out. Shameless plug. I mean, okay, maybe a little shame, but that's just my standard levels of shame for anything I'm saying. But this is great. Yeah, Google Assistant integration, Michael, and Material U. Lots of cool stuff. The app shortcuts, great idea. So, so not only kind of got people, with your ideas. Any questions for Jennifer? Anything you want to ask about these particular areas? Oh, are you doing custom intents yet? So Michael had a question. Jennifer, do you know of anyone doing custom intents, ways to jump into an app?
I am not yet doing custom intents. I keep trying to sell them to my current app I'm working on, but it unfortunately is just not a good use case for the current app I am developing for. So they look at me a little bit funny, like, why would we want custom intents for this? Because this is for employees that are doing a job. And I'm like, okay, yeah, they won't be driving. We've
got, custom intents, app shortcuts. I think that's great. That's one of those things that I kind of forget they exist. I think that you should always be looking about like long pressing on your app icons and seeing what comes up. I know that a lot of apps actually do have them, and it can be great. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, but isn't that kind of the idea of the app shortcuts that you have and those custom intents and those voice actions are kind of all basically the same thing?
I mean, they're not technically the same thing, but they all kind of tie together, and you can kind of use one to get to another. So they're trying to make it much easier they're trying to make it easier for different parts of their ecosystem to interact with each other, which is brilliant because it should be easy. It should be, I've got my app, and now that it goes correctly to my voice, which goes to my et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the world will be a better place when they succeed. I hope.
If you so a lot of the work overlaps. Basically, if you have a way to deep link into your app so that, you can jump straight to, a screen that's 2 or 3 clicks in, you can make that shortcut launchable through an app shortcut, or through that voice action. And it's that, a lot of the work, it seems like, is kind of duplicative or like maybe leverageable, where if you write it for one, you pretty much can reuse it for the other. And it's easy once you've done one to add the other.
Yeah, especially with things like app shortcuts tying in with your assistant stuff, and that it always drives me crazy when it's like I can do all these things in my app, but my Google Assistant doesn't know it, and they don't connect, and they're making it easier a little.
Yeah, the little demo video that you showed about ordering a pizza, being able to just say, "Hey, order a pizza from so and so," even if that only gets you 2 or 3 screens in. That's 2 or 3 screens in that normally would be like click, 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 and you kind of have to, but it's like, well, I know I can order a pizza through this thing. Just order a pizza and get to it. And then you're at least jumping to that point.
Yeah, and especially if this is an app that you're actually using very often, I mean, it could easily become, okay, Google, order my usual pizza. You see what I mean? And you're done, right? I mean, maybe you press a button.
Yeah, you probably want to confirm it and make sure, just because you don't want some toddler running up and saying, "Hey, order my usual," and then all of a sudden pizza starts showing up at the door, because once kids learn they can do that, they will do that. "Hey, G, order my usual pizza." All of a sudden you're like, wait, why are pizzas showing up every night? Oh no.
I have personally crash tested this thing, and I have to say that my assistant does not recognize my toddlers as me, so I am protected, unless I'm already talking, and then I'm kind of out of luck. But if I'm not in the middle of talking, I'm safe. But if I am talking, yeah, no, you're right.
Watch out. Cool. Well, if there's no other questions, Stacy did have a comment about instant apps. Waiting for that. Didn't seem, I didn't notice any instant app upgrades mentioned in GoogleIO, right, Stacy?
No, I just keep waiting for them to just make that whole thing a lot easier, so I can just do it from like a simple module side thing and just say, oh, well, when they hit this button, it loads these, grabs these modules, and all that kind of stuff. And because right now it just sucks, because you have to like, you obviously have logic, right, that needs to be shared, and you obviously have destinations that haven't been downloaded yet, and so you have to like always do, does this destination exist, and like all that kind of crap. And it's like, I mean, you made it so that they're not super tiny for each, but then they still didn't. I'm waiting for them to make it like kind of automatic. Oh, and as another thing, if you haven't checked, app bundles are going to be required like now.
Yes, thank you for
we got a vague message that showed up in a blog post that just said app bundles are required in August, and it's that there would be some turn off for existing apps in September.
Oh, wow. September.
With no dates. And it didn't say if it would just be turning off access to the app, or it didn't say, there was nothing that said like existing apps need to upgrade by this time or anything specific. It was just like, so just if you haven't switched to app bundles, do it now, because they could just randomly turn it off via their anything. And I think they already turned it off for any new apps, but like for any existing apps, it could just be at any moment now.
But yeah, especially if you're about to get ready to release something, freak out now. This is your cue to freak out. Yeah. Also, if you're doing anything with permissions and they're not, especially with location permission, I mean, this has been around for a bit, and you are not doing exactly what they want, also freak out now, because not only will they not let you upload, they may just ban your app. So these are things that as a developer, you need to be thinking about.
And they kind of don't care whether or not you disclose how you're using that tracking. So just be aware, there's some apps that have been pulled from big companies and identified as malware that have basically required them to like rewrite core structures in their app because of the way that location, like, and whether or not you're following all the things in their list of rules and regulations doesn't really matter. It's kind of how they feel, whether or not you're using it the way that they anticipate. So
be afraid, be very afraid, and have a good case, I'd say also.
just ask yourself, could this be creepy? And if it could be creepy, that's when they go and say your stuff is rejected, and they are very vague as to why.
Yeah, Google's all about not being creepy lately. That's it.
Yeah, that's the monicum. They're not going to tell you what's actually wrong. They're just going to be like, hey, we think this is, they won't even say like, we think this is a violation of our users' rights or anything. Like, they'll just be like, we don't think you're using this right. And then just turn it off. Like, I mean, like, places that have millions and millions of users, like, have had this happen where they've just been down for like a full month. No new downloads.
So I'm glad we could share a lot of these new things that are coming, because yes, some of them are kind of fun, like pulling in a palette from the user's wallpaper, and others of them are critical to being successful with your app, aka launching your app publicly, like permissions. You got to make sure you're doing that right. Otherwise, you may not exist as far as Google is concerned. You'll be banned. And so, yeah, give yourself some time, definitely, with these new things. Do not plan on finishing your app on Monday and launching it Monday afternoon, because you may run into some issues. So give yourself a week or two to submit it and work through that process, just because things are a-changing.
And app reviews for new apps are taking longer right now. So there's a disclosure that it may take you up to a week, or really just average iOS times.
Yeah. We used to have the whole, oh no, we have an extra week to squeeze in that feature that because iOS isn't going to be up. Well, now we don't.
iOS has gotten quicker sometimes, but.
And another thing to look out for, because it came in on iOS, which means it's going to probably show up on Android. If you have anything that can be considered a subscription, the user must be able to unsubscribe from the application itself directly. So, and even potentially, depending on how strict they are about it, they must be able to do so potentially through the actual like store. So if you're delivering digital content, odds are they're going to make sure that you can that you need to also be able to unsubscribe from the store itself.
I believe they also added a requirement that if you can sign up through the app, you need to be able to remove your account and have it all deleted, like basically have all of your data deleted through the app as well. So not just log out, but also delete your account, which I don't know how they're going to check that, because how do you prove that you deleted the user's account? I mean, you can, oh, it's still available on a backup, but oh yeah, we deleted it from the production version. If you try to log in, we'll say that account doesn't exist, but we can always save your data somewhere else. So I'm not really sure how Apple will know that you didn't do that, but at least
you have to follow. Well, if you're gonna, GDPR already requires that.
Has right to be forgotten. So you would be violating the law by not doing it, but that doesn't always stop companies from doing it. So, and
isn't that going in next month on the iOS side? So I think there's we're just waiting on the Android side for when they're going to give us a date on it. But everything I've heard is you're going to get it. Like, it's going to happen. So prepare your legal teams.
Now, just for our audiences that, are not as immersed in the law of app development and data, GDPR is a European regulation, I believe, but if you're only in the United States, the law is different for you, but Google is now going to be enforcing it on you anyway. So, I mean, it's a thing. But
and I think GDPR is one of ones that follows the person doesn't follow the, like it's not
Yes.
applicable to the country. So if you're French and you're in the United, if you are a Frenchman and you happen to be in the United States and you download a US app, you are supposed to have the right to be forgotten by that company. So basically every company in the world has to adhere to GDPR pretty much, because there might be some European that is using your app. So
you also know that I think it's pretty much as infectious as they could get it. It also follows, I believe, if your company is based in a European region, it also follows that.
Yeah.
So it is, and it doesn't matter whether or not so used to be you could do it a little bit by region or region code or where they put their addresses or anything, but this actually is tied to citizenship. So if they are on a visa working in the US, and you have no other way of determining anything about them, it does not matter. You still have to adhere to it.
The change.
I bet even if you asked whether or not and they lied to you, you're probably still liable.
Yep. Even if you only distribute in the US, you still have to adhere to GDPR because of how infectious it is.
I wanted to avoid using the terms infectious or viral.
I mean, it can dig pretty deep.
Can have long-lasting impacts and can.
And it also means that you have to look very closely at the way that you actually implement your libraries, because there are a number of libraries that automatically enable certain features. And you have to, Facebook, for instance, automatically enables tracking, but per GDPR, you must be able to disable that tracking or prompt them prior to tracking. So, and that happens by default, even if you aren't actually using their tracking stuff.
So we started
with, you're not using it just because it collects the data even internally.
Now we have and also be very, very afraid. So that yes, new things in Android. They're exciting. Be very, very afraid.
And accessibility lawsuits. Everybody knows what an accessibility lawsuit is. So make sure your content IDs match across all your platforms, because you're gonna get a content ID thing, or that the text is different, or your color contrast isn't enough.
Yeah, try out all your screens with that screen reader.
Yeah, it makes you wonder with the Material U type stuff of where you're like, oh, well, we just pull those colors dynamically, but that's why they offer such different shades, and so that you can kind of guarantee that your standard colors and your custom colors, in theory, you can make sure that those are going to have enough contrast between them by choosing
there's
the right.
No guarantee. If you actually look at the documentation, there's no guarantee in the documentation that it does so.
They say
so it's still going to require that you do it.
They told us verbally. By the way, it does this if you do it right. But
right, verbally, verbally, not this does X in document.
No paper trail.
Right. Because accessibility laws are different depending on where you are. And so, and lo and behold, GDPR finds a new avenue.
So thank you again, Jennifer. This has been very helpful, very insightful. I think we've all learned a lot, and we can all be very excited about Android 12 when it comes to our devices, or when we get a device that supports it. And I just want to thank you again for presenting this. This has been awesome. And thanks everybody for coming and attending. We'll look for notes. Or you can look for notes on our meetup site. And if you're watching this on YouTube, hopefully they're down in the description below. Like and subscribe, all those good things that you have to say whenever you post anything online. Thanks for joining us. And as always, check out ggdallas.com for upcoming events. We'll see you next time, everybody.
I feel like we should have an outro song. Bye, guys.
Da-dum, dum, da-dum, dum.
I don't, no. I don't want to get copyright strikes. No singing.